releasing
God. Ears ringing. Ugh. Not better.
one feature in the update that I believe is flawed in a major way. That's not to say the rest of the update is perfect. I still think Trail Ruins, for example, could use a little bit more work. Sorry, I'm just not a big fan of getting 30 pieces of stained glass. No, the thing I want to talk about today has a much more serious concern, and before the update releases on June 7th, I want to go over what that problem is and how I would personally solve it. After all, I don't think pointing out an issue is very productive unless I have a solution for it. So if you enjoyed this video, please make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Also feel free, especially for this video, to comment if you have a better solution or if you think this isn't a problem at all. But with that said, what is the problem? Since you're watching this video, I assume you're at least a little experienced watching Minecraft videos here on YouTube. I personally like to watch a ton. What would I do without Drane's 37th Manhunt? One type of video I've seen popping up on my recommended a lot lately has to do with the fact that Minecraft is supposedly getting easier. Now, in my opinion, that's a bit hard to judge. Yes, it's probably easier to get a full set of diamonds now than it would have been, say, 10 years ago, but in my opinion, getting full netherite is much harder than getting a full diamond set ever was. Minecraft has to appeal to a large audience, so making the game too hard would likely turn a lot of people away. I think Mojang's current approach of making harder optional content is really smart. 1.19 saw the addition of the Warden and the Ancient City. This is, in my opinion, the hardest aspect of the game, but it's also completely separate from everything else. You never need to go near one to beat the game, and it only acts as a way to get some good loot and a few exclusive items. So I think them leaning into adding more difficult side content is good, as inexperienced players can just ignore it, and the rest can have a fun new challenge. That's why, in my opinion, I don't have a problem with Minecraft's current difficulty. I think the main progression of the game is good as is, and the side content is really where Mojang should be focusing on.
Why doesn't it not drop anything for me?
That brings us to their latest attempt at making Minecraft a bit more difficult for experienced players, the Netherite smithing template. Currently in 1.19, the way you obtain Netherite armor or tools is by first making it out of diamond, collecting 4 pieces of ancient debris, crafting that into a Netherite ingot, and then finally combining the piece of equipment with the ingot. I think this process, as it wasn't bad. Ancient debris is incredibly rare. It can take several hours to get the amount needed for a full set of armor and tools. That said though, since this is the most powerful armor, I'm not against it making it more difficult to obtain, as long as it's reasonable, which we'll get to in a bit. The Netherite template, which is being added in 1.20, will now be a requirement for every single weapon or tool you wish to upgrade. The way you obtain this item will be through the game's Bastion, where they have a 10% chance to spawn in any given Bastion chest, besides the Treasure Bastion, which has a 100% chance. Now this may seem like it could be very annoying to obtain all the templates you need, but luckily it is possible to duplicate the template once you get one. It works the exact same way the new armor trims do. By putting it in the crafting table along with 7 diamonds and a piece of netherrack, you'll be able to get another. So now that we've laid out what this feature is, what's the problem with it? Well, since I'm far from the only person to cover this topic, I want to go over a few complaints that I think aren't justified, or at least are not really problems, before I get to my personal one. So let's take a look at what some other people think the problems with this item are. 1. Netherite didn't need to be made harder to get. While I understand why some people may feel this way, I don't exactly agree. It's clear that a lot of people have been wanting the game to get harder, and since netherite equipment is entirely optional, I think this is a good place to add some challenge. Now some people may think, well, why don't they just make a new armor set that's even better than netherite, like emerald armor? Well, first off, give up. They're never adding emerald armor. It's been over a decade. Stop asking for it. But really, netherite is already so powerful that having another set that's better than it would honestly just make the game seem even easier. Yes, this isn't the most elegant solution, but if this is how it worked from the start, I don't think anyone would complain too much. This complaint comes off way more as someone being upset that it's changing. A complaint like this will always appear in some form whenever anything is updated to be more difficult. I think in this case, it's a necessary evil to satisfy those who have felt Minecraft isn't hard enough anymore. 2. Duplicating the netherite is too expensive. This is a complaint I've seen for both this template and the rest of the armor trims, so why not go ahead and cover why I disagree in both cases. First off, for the armor trims, they are an entirely cosmetic feature. If you don't want to use 7 diamonds to make your boots a little bit more drippy, you don't have to. I think them having a duplication method at all is fantastic. If you don't want to use diamonds, you can always keep searching for more of the templates and structures. Diamonds themselves have always been a bit lamer than it may initially appear. Besides diamond tools and armor, the only crafting recipes it was used in were the enchanting table and jukebox. Oh my god, look dude! Once you had both those things, diamonds were basically pointless. In the late game, iron and gold are actually a much better resource as they have a large number of uses outside of the armament tools. The armor trims using diamonds give the material a long-needed new use, so I think this use of diamonds is good. I'm sure some people are upset by needing 7 diamonds, but to be honest, if you go strip mining for like 30 minutes, you can get what you need and probably more. In fact, I think making these require this amount of diamonds is great as it basically forces people to actually go mining. You can easily get diamond equipment from villagers, but now mining has a much better use since I find getting raw diamonds to be much easier down in caves. So since I find how this works on just the aesthetic armor trims, I'm obviously on board with the netherite template being difficult as well. This actually gives a practical upgrade, so requiring a large amount of resources is more than fair. Yes, this is quite expensive, but again, these are the best tools and armor in the game we're talking about. They should be expensive. Normally, I craft 10 netherite items, full armor and tools, plus a second pickaxe, which would mean that I would need 10 templates. That equates to 63 diamonds as you would need 9 duplicates, assuming you only got 1 from a chest. I personally think that's pretty fair for the upgrades you get. Again, this is another one that sort of comes off to me as being upset that it's changing. Had it been this way from the start, most would probably be more on board. But with those non-issues out of the way, what is my actual problem with this item? Seems like I'm pretty on board with them making netherite harder to obtain, which I am, but I think this approach is still flawed. While duplicating the template is more than fair, obtaining one in the first place is where I have to draw the line. Just like every other armor trim, this is tied to a structure, that being the bastion. Now I do want to say that unlike the duplication method, I think this shared approach doesn't work for both. First off, why do I think this still works for the trims? Well, I think these work as fantastic structures in Minecraft have been desperately needing some better loot in my opinion, and these act as perfect solutions to that. Most structures now have an exclusive armor trim piece that will make players want to seek them out, so collecting them all is a lot of fun. The most important thing that separates these from the netherite template though is the fact that the armor trims are purely aesthetic. When the template is required to upgrade your gear though, this is where some problems really start to show. First thing to consider is finding bastions that all can be quite tedious, and the fact that the template isn't even
unless you have chunk face.
Now again, that's not necessarily that bad, but it is really bad when it comes to multiplayer. Now I know you all in the Odyssey Central audience likely don't have any friends, but for those lucky few who do, these are more than likely going to be a nightmare for servers. If someone goes around the nether and takes all of the nearby templates, then that almost completely locks people out of netherite equipment. This is especially bad for public servers, as new players would have to try and
I can imagine that.
A chance at a template, or somehow get one from someone who already has one. If that wasn't bad enough, this problem could be even worse for any server that doesn't start in the 1.20 update, and this goes for single player too. If you didn't have netherite by the time the update drops, good luck generating a new bastion. I just started a server with my friends a few weeks ago, and we've had to be on the grind to get netherite really quickly. Oh, also, I finally have a world to play in for these Minecraft videos instead of some random new survival world. Yippee! My server only has a few of my friends, but for servers that are much larger, I really think that locking netherite behind a structure like this is a bad idea. I'm sure that some of you may say that it's unrealistic to run low on bastions, or that people could just look up the seed, but I disagree on both of those points. Bastions aren't the most common structure, and considering it's not even guaranteed to have a template, there's a good chance people won't be able to find any for themselves. Also for the seed, sometimes people won't have access to it if they're not the server owner. So yeah, I think them only putting this in bastions was a bad idea. But how would I personally solve this issue? There are a lot of ways to go about it, but the one that I think could easily address every issue I brought up would be piglin bartering. If you somehow didn't know, giving a piglin a piece
I think that's a great idea. Like, it should be like a 1 in 500 chance.
To some more helpful items like soul speed enchantment bugs. I have always felt as though that the bartering system leaned on being a bit disappointing though. Yes, it's great for speedruns and some other game modes like Skyblock, but in pure survival mode, you almost never need to do it. It's almost always way easier to get the resource you want without bartering. With one exception. Piglin bartering is the only way to get the soul speed enchantment I mentioned before alongside bastions. This system, in my opinion, works incredibly well. While it's probably easier to find the enchantment in bastions, having the option to get it anywhere with piglins is great. It's their rarest trade though, only having a 1.09% chance of happening. It took me 185 gold ingots to get my soul speed book in this world. But I think we could take the soul speed example and apply it to the netherite template. Why not, alongside it appearing in bastions, make it an extremely rare barter from the piglin? They could say half as likely as soul speed, that way people would still have the incentive to go look for bastions, but they also have the option to trade with a piglin if all the bastions have been looted. I think this is by far the best method they can implement to still keep the idea of the netherite template, while making it still a feasible item to get for those playing on Bing, why I personally disagree. The problem I see is that it would make the process go back to basically not being too difficult, since players could theoretically just trade for all of the templates they need. Considering it took me 185 gold to get the soul speed book, and I'm suggesting this trade be even rarer, I don't think this is going to make the process of getting all the templates any easier. I see this more of just being a different option than having to go for a Bastion. I get that they wanted to incentivize more exploration in this update, but I think the armor trims already do a good enough job on their own. The Bastion also has the snout pattern already exclusive to it, so this barter system for the netherite template wouldn't completely remove the desire to go for a Bastion. Heck, to even get enough gold for the trade to be likely, people would probably want to go to a Bastion anyway due to their large gold supply. I think the rarity of the barter is pretty important. It should definitely be the rarest one, but the exact number would need to be tested. But I think once that number is found, this would completely fix my problems with the netherite template. I'm sure others would still have the issues I mentioned before, but I think this one definitely needs to be addressed, hopefully in a small update following 1.20's release. But anyways, that's it for this video. Do you all think the biggest problem with this update is actually the Silence armor trim only appearing in 1% of Ancient City chests? Let me know in the comments. Sorry for this shorter than normal video, but I really wanted to talk about this before the update came out. I'm curious to hear if any of you all have any other solutions to this as well, so feel free to comment them down below. But anyways, Drabones for Smash, and I'll see you guys next time.
I agree. I think
Mario in this video. Mario.
Due to Teen Spin's life-saving, Kami's life savings on mobile games. Bruh.
No minimum deposit to open. Simple tools. Control at hand. One bank for today and tomorrow. Chase. Make more of what's yours.
Prepare for the Dunkin' Run campaign commercial. Great deal. Watch Doc get one of your bucket. I'm Matt Taylor.
Yeah, I love that.
Greg.
Alright, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another video here on the channel, and today, man, we're going to be taking a look at an absolutely insane story. Apparently this is coming out of China, which is a little bit more surprising to me because I feel like a lot of the time, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong about this, but a lot of the time when you hear stories about like kids basically spending a bunch of money on mobile games and whatnot, it seems like it really kind of happens like here in the United States a lot, but I don't really hear about that elsewhere. I just kind of figured maybe it was because we all sucked at parenting, but this is a just crazy story, man. Like, it just, you read something like this, and not only am I just like, how did this even happen? Like, I feel like there's 8 billion ways this could have been avoided, but it's also like, how do you come back from this? Like, how do you move forward? What do you do, right? So, today we'll be taking a look at a story where apparently a teenage girl completely bankrupted her family, spending money on, like, mobile games on her phone and whatnot.
Bro,
and,
mobile
like,
games?
It was like a crazy level of just financial destruction levied against this Chinese family by their daughter. So here on the channel, we've covered before a lot of situations where, you know, kids will spend, you know, $8,000 or something. Plans or Fruit Ninja, I don't know mobile games anymore, bro. I stopped playing most of them when I was like 15 or 16, but I don't think we've ever heard of a situation where someone spent like upwards of $50,000 to $100,000, something crazy like that, on some mobile games. I don't know how that's possible. I don't know. We'll get into all that. I'm gonna introduce y'all to the story here real quick. So mobile gaming
how do you
really add up if you're not careful, but one gamer went way
$64,000.
everything her family had earned, all without her parents' knowledge. According to a report from insider Gong Yuwang, the mother of the 13-year-old received a call from her daughter's school expressing concern that she was playing too many games. This resulted in Yuwang checking her bank balance and was absolutely mortified to see the damage her child had caused over the course of a few months. What Yuwang discovered was that her daughter had spent $64,000 on games, including $30,000 on microtransactions over the course of 5 months. Plus, she spent money on classmates so they could play with her. Yuwang's daughter told Elephant News that she had no idea where the money was coming from or how much she was spending. However, she reportedly tried to hide the evidence from her parents by deleting the transactions off her phone. Alright, so there's like 6 or 7 things already that I kind of want to address one by one here. So first and foremost, I just am, out of everything here, surprised that she only found out about this after
like 5 months.
Called home and was like, oh hey, your daughter's playing.
Dude, like, if I even try to spend like, what's it called? If I even tried to spend like $2 without my parents' consent, like, what's it called? They'd be after me like the CIA was after Osama bin Laden back in 2001, dude. Like, they would hound on me. Like, they would literally track me down and absolutely snipe me with Hellfire missiles from the Apache attack helicopter. Like, you get the point. They're on my ass. Like, they're completely gonna destroy me. So how did this girl get away with it? That's my question.
Too much video games in school. Like, she didn't get a call from the bank like, hey, you've spent $64,000 in the last 4 months on Candy Crush. Anything you think maybe we should know about with that? I don't know, like, the man of the house or, like, the husband didn't check the bank account, like, hey, where the fuck are all of our savings at? Apparently nothing. Apparently there was no safeguards in place, no safety nets, anything. But apparently the school was the one who broke the news of this whole thing. I don't know how it works over in China, but, like, here in the United States, I don't even like, it just seems incomprehensible because, like, I feel like most people's, like, debit cards and, like, bank accounts have, like, a daily transaction limit, right? Like, for instance, if you try to spend $4,000 on your debit card when you typically spend $70 a day to live, right? Usually, like, your bank kind of, like, freezes your card or, like, calls you and is like, hey, are these transactions ones that you're making? Or, you know, something, right? Like, some sort of safety net is in place to prevent people from just, like, destroying their lives financially or getting scammed by someone who steals their info, right? Like, nothing in place, by the way, just allowed to do whatever you want, apparently. But also, I want to point out, how did it take months
No
for this
kidding.
to be figured out, right? Like, how do you go months without checking your fucking bank account? I don't even understand, like, how that would even be possible, because, like, if you think about it, right, most people, I would say, check their bank account, like, I don't know, daily, every other day, at least, like, once or something a week to make sure, like, oh, hey, my money's not just draining out of my bank account, I have enough money to cover my bills, you know, like, that's kind of part of being financially responsible is, like, knowing what's going on with your money. How did it take, like, it says 5 months that this all went on, right? 5 months, you didn't check your bank account and notice, like, $3,000 a week disappearing to just, like, fucking raid Shadow Legends and Clash of Clans or something, bro? Like, that just didn't cross your mind as something to maybe take a look out for? Now, it also says she spent money on her classmates so that they could play. So I guess, I don't know, she was kicking it in class, just buying everybody fucking gyms to upgrade their town hall. That's kind of hood, I guess. Like, I mean, if you're gonna get away with fucking 5 months worth of stealing your entire family's, like, life savings, you might as well buy your friends something nice too, right? Dude, I wish there were kids like this when I was in school, man. Like, just pop up at the lunch table or whatever and pull up Clash of Clans and be like, hey, bro, you want the $99.99 bundle of gyms for your town hall so we win this next war? I'm like, yeah, I want some gyms, man. Like, yeah, I want my town hall, bro. But it says, she had no idea where the money was coming from or how much she was spending. Now, I think that's just complete bullshit. Like, there's just no possible way, right? Like, there's no way you're so dumb, I guess, to not know that your parents' money comes from them, like, working or doing something, right? Like, when I was 13, I was very well introduced to the idea of, like, what a job is, like, how my parents paid for bills and, like, gave us food. I mean, like, we weren't just oblivious, complete fucking morons, right? Like, they had no idea, right? Like, there's just no way that she had no clue, like, oh, hey, my mom's debit card that's on my phone. She probably gets the money from that at that job she works 40 hours a week at. That's probably where all that comes from, right? But it's clear she knew she did something wrong because, like it says, she tried to hide the evidence, I guess, and, like, deleted the transactions off her phone. I assume that means she just, like, deleted the games, because, like, from my knowledge, you can't just, like, go on to things and just delete the transactions. Like, I've never really heard anything like that. So, yeah, my assumption is she was just, like, going through and just deleting all the apps off of her phone so it looked like she didn't have them. I don't know why she would have ever thought that was going to work, as if, like, the bank was just mysteriously making up all of these transactions randomly over the course of 5 entire fucking months, right? Like, nothing about this situation really makes any sense. I don't think it's really intended to make any sense. I think this is just one of those things where it's like, you kind of just have to look and just wonder, bro. So, I don't know, I feel like some people will look at a situation like this and they'll be like, oh, this is the problem with mobile games and microtransactions, yada, yada, yada. And don't get me wrong, I hate microtransactions just as much as the next guy. But ultimately, I don't know, like, I have never been inclined to spend $30,000 on microtransactions.
No
right?
kidding.
Like, that's just never come across my mind, right? At a certain point, you kind of just have to, like, deal with the self-responsibility, you know what I mean? And I get it, we're talking about a 13-year-old child here. It's not like this is a fully grown adult that, like, is fully aware of what they're doing. I mean, mean, I feel like at 13, you know well enough, especially if you're deleting this stuff off your phone, you know well enough that what you're doing is wrong, and you know you shouldn't be doing it, but being 13 at the same time, you make stupid, just outrageous decisions, especially if your parents are doing nothing to intervene or, like, stop you from doing that shit. Realistically, in my opinion, this, like, 95% goes back on the parents. I mean, in every way, shape, or form. Like, they, number one, completely failed their daughter by allowing her to become so addicted to mobile games that, you know, pick your fucking poison, right? She's distracted in school to the point that the school has to call home and be like, hey, your kid is just coming to school playing video games on her phone. So she's distracted in school and not taking her schoolwork seriously. She's spending tens of thousands of dollars on microtransactions and just like random shit that has to do with these games or whatever, right? I can only imagine that she was showing signs at home that there was some sort of problem here, right? Like throughout all of these huge red flags that were constantly being presented to the parents in this situation, like, hey, your daughter kind of has a problem here that needs to be addressed. They didn't do anything. Like, they didn't show any sort of, like, parental responsibility here. Like, even to the point, like, they're clearly so irresponsible, they don't even check their bank account in 5 months to realize, like, hey, our daughter's spending a bunch of money on video games, right? Like, if you don't look at your bank account for 5 months, you're just irresponsible. Like, it's just all it comes down to. And, like, allowing it to get this bad with your kid and not intervening or doing anything, like, that's just bullshit. The mother, meanwhile, who only has 7 cents left to her name, is trying to recoup the lost money by requesting refunds, but so far she hasn't gotten any of the funds back. Quote, I never thought a 13-year-old girl could do this, the mom said. Quote, I'm in a daze. My head feels like it's going to explode. So she has 7 cents left to her name. Like, I mean, you can't pay any light bills with that. You probably can't even afford, like, food with that, bro. You can't even buy a stick of bubble gum for 7 cents, right? Like, it's Jover for you, dog. You can't even put 7 cents in the little, like, gumball dispensing machines at the fucking mall and get a gumball to chew on, right? Like, I don't know what you do at that point, but she's trying to get money back by requesting these refunds, and apparently that's not working out because when it turns out you spent $50,000 or $60,000 on fucking, you know, mobile games over 5 months, and you didn't care for 5 months, I'm assuming that those companies probably don't really see any reason to show you any sort of, I guess, mercy for these decisions that were made. So when it comes down to it, right, this is just personal responsibility going out the window. Just I never thought a 13-year-old girl could do this. I'm in a daze. Like, yeah, I get blaming your kid to a certain point, but let's not sit here and pretend like this 13-year-old was just, you know, pulling off the craziest heist of the century. She has complete fucking morons for parents who aren't even grown-ups enough to check their bank accounts once every half of a year. I mean, like, it was really just more or less a recipe for disaster. And shit, that something else was going to end up becoming a problem because, like I said, these are just people who realistically were not involved enough in what their kids were doing. Like, I'm pretty sure most smartphones and whatnot come now with features to, like, prevent shit like this, to, like, prevent kids from taking, you know, the card associated with, like, their phone or whatever and just running up a bill on it. Like,
I don't know who doesn't check their... Oh wow, Minecraft is not available on Chromebooks? This toilet is in pain. Big lie about nuclear waste.
Okay, I need to show you something. This is a nuclear reactor built in 19
1962.
The atomic power plant of the future, developed by Argonne National Laboratory.
But it's not just any old nuclear reactor.
This reactor is different in many ways
Dresden?
from the nuclear power plants that supply some of our homes today with electricity.
The biggest difference was the fuel they used to make electricity. This nuclear reactor made electricity out of nuclear waste.
Nuclear waste. Nuclear waste. Some kind of nuclear waste. Well, certainly we're a mismatch.
When I think of nuclear waste, I think of that classic glowing green goo in yellow barrels, you know? This radioactive stuff that we end up with after all of the fuel is used up.
It's not really that. It's not a green goop. It's actually just.
Like, we fight about
It
nuclear
looks
waste
historically
all
the same.
time. We say, can we even use nuclear because we end up with this radioactive waste, and where should we store it, and not near my house? And you're telling me that there's a nuclear reactor that can make electricity out of nuclear waste, and it was built in the 1960s? Back then, they were predicting that we would use this technology to build this incredible clean energy future.
And by the year 2000, more than half the electric power of the country will come from atomic sources.
But today, we're nowhere close to that. We don't reuse any of our nuclear waste. Instead, it just piles up. But if this technology works, that means that our nuclear waste isn't radioactive trash. It's an incredible clean energy resource. And it's just sitting there sucking up money to keep it safe. We think about technology as constantly moving forward. But this is a story about how we left behind a technology that could change our energy future. So, this video is about what happened to using nuclear waste to make electricity, to the clean energy future that we could have had. But more importantly, this video is about the people trying to bring that future back.
Nuclear waste.
Nuclear waste problem.
The concern about nuclear energy.
There are concerns about emissions.
Abundant power
We need clean energy.
energizes the city.
We are coming up with new nuclear reactors
That will guarantee a plentiful supply of atomic power to the nation and the world for centuries to come.
I first got obsessed with this topic because a couple of weeks ago, my friend and fellow video journalist Johnny Harris called me up and he asked me for some help on a video that he was making all about nuclear power.
Let's do this. I'm going to go down the rabbit hole on why people are afraid of nuclear energy. What are the events and the things that freak us all out? And I kind of want you to do the opposite. To look at, like, is there a future for this technology, and should we actually be as afraid as we are?
We shouldn't be as
started to dig
afraid.
into it, and as part of my research process into nuclear
We should
power,
not
I
be
got
as
excited
afraid
to
of
visit
nuclear
one of the
technology.
largest and oldest national research centers in the United States. Here we are. This is Argonne National Laboratory. We're gonna get to go see.
You have to be a stupid idiot in order to,
Before I was born. Hold
like,
on.
actually
You
make
remember
it go
that?
wrong.
Argonne National Laboratory.
Yeah, this is the same national lab that developed that incredible old nuclear waste recycling reactor. But I didn't know that yet. So we go on this incredible tour. It's awesome. I'm learning a ton. I'm thinking, oh my god, I'm gonna be so over-prepared to talk to Johnny about nuclear power. And on this tour with me are these two people from Oklo, which is a company that's working on new kinds of nuclear reactors. And at the end of the tour, I'm sitting with them under this big tree, and one of them says something that just short-circuits my brain.
So we're actually working with Argonne closely on how to recycle existing nuclear waste in the U.S. There's enough used fuel to power the country for the next 150 years.
What the hell?
There is enough used fuel in the country, in the U.S. alone, to generate power for the country for the next 150 years.
There's enough used
Wow.
fuel, meaning nuclear waste, in
That's
the
a lot of
US
waste.
to power the country for 150 years. Like, you can see me not believing her. I think it's some fake math. Like, maybe technically there's enough energy there, but like we could never really use it. We don't have to do that.
Whereas, like, when they say, you know, geothermal, you could power the Earth for like thousands of years if we could get all of the energy out of the Earth. It's like, yeah, we can't. We don't know how to do that. Do we know how to?
Yeah, they just don't have the facility, commercial facility to do so. But the technology is there.
Experts differ on the exact number of years here, but they agree that the nuclear waste we have now could be used as a large energy source based on technology that we've already built. But it gets even better. If you reuse that nuclear waste, especially if you reuse it more than once, you can dramatically cut down on the amount of time that the waste after all of that's done is radioactive for. So the amount of time that we have to store our nuclear waste. The problems are cost and global politics, not fundamental technology. Here we go. By the time I got to DC to talk to Johnny about this, I was obsessed.
Hello!
Welcome to our studio.
We have all this nuclear waste, right? And it is scary, but imagine that there was a way that you could actually not just store it, but actually use it.
So you can use nuclear waste as fuel for more
You can
energy.
recycle nuclear
You
waste.
can recycle nuclear waste.
Yes. And I dived all the way into this in a video that I'm now going to promise is going to be on my channel by the time we air this one.
This is that video. To understand what's going on here, you have to understand that nuclear waste isn't what you've been told.
Okay, hang on a sec. So a lot of the footage that I got in this video is from Storyblocks, and they're sponsoring this video. I genuinely love Storyblocks. I an episode from I type in again so I can now back to the story.
Alright, let's zoom out for a sec. Basically, all of the electricity that you use, except solar, comes from spinning a turbine.
It's magic.
Most of the time inside a power plant, what you're really doing is you're heating up a liquid into steam and using that to spin the turbine.
The key source is getting heat. As long as you have heat enough to make steam, you can make energy.
Use liquid that the earth already heated up for
Actually, technically, it's not being... You're not creating energy, but you're just merely converting it. For example, nuclear power plants convert radioactive energy to energy. How it is because radioactive energy gives off thermal energy, and therefore, because of thermal energy, we can use it and turn it into energy. The way you use thermal energy and turn it into energy is you need to heat up water until it makes steam. Steam is highly pressurized. Push it through a turbine, makes energy because that turbine is hooked up to a motor. And motors can either go from electrical energy to torque, or from torque to electrical energy.
Thermal. Or you can split atoms apart inside special rocks and make them really hot. That's nuclear. And the special hot rocks are uranium.
Uranium.
Uranium-235!
Uranium. Sweet
But only a really small part of natural uranium, less than 1%, is a kind of breakable uranium that can sustain a nuclear reaction. This is uranium-235. The number refers to the number of neutrons in the atom.
Yep.
So typically uranium goes through a process called enrichment, which is making more of the uranium-235 out of the less useful uranium-238. By the time that's all done, your fuel looks like this. If you take your finger up to your first joint, that's about the size of a uranium fuel pellet. Those pellets then go into these long metal rods that I got to see while I was at Argonne. And then comes the nuclear reaction. So you fire a bunch of free atoms at your uranium-235, which cracks it into smaller, very unstable atoms, and throws off a couple other neutrons in the process, which zoom off and hit more uranium nearby.
Yup, and it chain reacts.
More, a chain reaction of
fission.
splitting atoms. And each time they get split, a little mass turns into energy, which makes the rods really hot, which heats the water, which spins the turbine, which generates electricity. Ta-da! But eventually, after 4 to 6 years, you've broken enough of that special uranium that the reaction stops working efficiently. And that spent fuel is now considered high-level nuclear waste. At this point, that waste is a mix of 238 and a little bit of leftover 235 and a bunch of very unstable atoms that give off ionizing radiation. That ionizing radiation, in large doses, is the bad stuff. It's the scary, invisible killer that affects our tissues and our DNA in often deadly ways. And the thing is, this nuclear waste stays radioactive for an insanely long time. We're talking hundreds of thousands of years sometimes, which is, to put it mildly, a problem.
We've got to find better and safer ways to store nuclear waste.
Waste that can remain radioactive for centuries, that remains a big problem.
Right now, most nuclear waste in the United States is stored in dry casks that look like this to protect people from the radioactive material inside. Those dry casks are meant to last decades, but not hundreds of thousands of years, which is what we're talking about here. So we've been having this ongoing fight for decades about what to do with nuclear waste. There are options for long-term storage, and some countries are already doing that. Johnny and I got into the details in his video. But right now, in the US and in lots of other countries, there are a lot of dry casks full of nuclear waste just sitting there.
Sitting there, yeah, do nothing.
So to summarize, we take uranium out of the ground, we use it once, and then we store it basically forever. This is the once-through fuel cycle that the US has today. Now listen to the analogy that they used in the 1960s to describe how stupid this fuel cycle would be.
Would you say that using the 235 and not the rest is sort of like using the cream and throwing away the milk?
Exactly.
The key is to figure out how to filter out the stuff that's still useful from the real waste that's not.
Turns out Argonne is one of the few places that is still testing nuclear waste recycling in the US, and I got to go see it. I'm just gonna go right on up, and they're gonna tell me to stop filming right now. It was a whole thing. I had to send them my passport to prove that I was a US citizen before they let me on the tour, and I wasn't allowed to wear these cool safety glasses. How do I look? Let's do it. Luckily, Argonne itself has actually published footage from the lab that I toured, so here's what they're doing inside that large protective box. First, they cut up the nuclear waste into little pieces. Then they dissolve those pieces into a vat of molten salts. When they run electricity through that vat, it separates the uranium and other useful
Electrolysis! Yes! Genius!
Pushes it across the vat, where it creates deposits of the useful stuff on the other side. Then they make new fuel rods out of those deposits and stick them back in a reactor. And it's not just possible to do that once, you can do it multiple times. Not just making electricity, but also reducing how long that waste is radioactive for, because you're using up the materials that last the longest. From hundreds of thousands of years down sometimes to hundreds of years, which is a much easier time frame to store something. If you can pull this off, you can have a nuclear fuel cycle that looks like this. You mine the uranium, you use it in a reactor, filter out the useful stuff, then you use it again, and maybe again, and again. And when you can't anymore, then you put it in much shorter term storage that's much more manageable. This is called a closed fuel cycle, and there are lots of variations. But it's not hypothetical. Some countries, like Japan for example, are already doing this. And they say they do it because it reduces their dependence on imported fuel, it conserves uranium, and it reduces the radioactivity of their nuclear waste. Which makes sense. So, what happened in the United States?
Tonight I want to have an unpleasant talk with you.
In 1977, President Jimmy Carter announced new policies meant to stop the growing risk of nuclear war. And that meant stopping all nuclear recycling. Why? Well, you remember the materials that we separated out during the recycling process. One of those materials was
plutonium.
Which is a highly radioactive element that
Extremely volatile if you can.
So President Jimmy Carter stopped all nuclear recycling.
Plutonium is stupid powerful. Only atoms of it, maybe way less than a gram of it, can be found in the Earth's surface at any single time. I don't know if it's exactly a gram, but plutonium is almost completely gone. So there's so little plutonium in the Earth that we just mark it as nothing. But an orange size of plutonium is powerful enough to wipe an entire city off the map. Only about 13 pounds of plutonium was all it took to fuel the Fat Man to destroy Nagasaki. All that, just an orange of plutonium can destroy an entire city. So, let's go. I get where she's going, because even the Soviets have built what's known as breeder reactors. Chernobyl was a breeder reactor. Not only did it make electricity, but it also produced plutonium, weapons-grade plutonium, and therefore, it uses plutonium to build warheads. Plutonium is a dangerous material. It should never ever be created. It needs to be destroyed. It needs to be completely removed from the clutches of humankind.
Saying, quote, a viable and economic...
I mean, unless it's it may not destroy, but it could be used for reactors like RTGs, but other than that, it needs to be destroyed. Never let...
called fast reactors, and toward the kinds of reactors that exist today.
Shouldn't be used for weapons.
Reactors. But while the US stopped nuclear recycling, other countries didn't. The ban on nuclear recycling stopped being seen as helpful to slow the threat of nuclear proliferation. So President Reagan lifted the ban in 1981, but by then, companies had invested in the kinds of reactors that couldn't recycle, the kind that we have now. Today, the main claim is that nuclear fuel recycling is too high cost. It's just not economical. And that's true compared to using new uranium, which has been cheap and plentiful. What incentive did anyone have to recycle their fuel? But those incentives are changing. The combination of wondering whether global conflict will cut off fuel supply, and the recognition that we need more clean energy in as many ways as possible, as fast as possible, has started to wake people up to technology and a dream that we left behind.
We're not far off from it. We're not talking about a technology that we're dreaming of, that we hope can work. We're talking about technology that has already been demonstrated before and proven. We just need to commercialize it.
There is a lot to figure out and a long way to go. But if we can recycle nuclear waste, I think it says something profound about what we as humans are capable of. Splitting atoms, sure, But I mean something much more simple. Changing our minds and overcoming our fears. To use our resources and our technology and our ingenuity to make other people's lives a little bit better tomorrow than they are today.
And this, of course, is just the beginning. Not only will atomic power be released, someday we will harness the rise and fall of the tides and imprison the rays of the sun. We have indeed just begun.
Huge If True is an optimistic show about using technology to make the world better. If that's something that you believe in, the best thing that you can do to support us is to subscribe. And if you do subscribe, let me know. I'd love to meet you in the comments. See you for the next one.
So you got some style now. You got that shirt from. Thank you.
WTF happened to nuclear technology? I think one of the few good things that's good about Illinois, fun fact, about 58% of our energy is nuclear, which means that there's a very high chance that my house is being powered by nuclear right now.
90% of signs of aging are caused by the sun. La Roche-Posay Amphelio sunscreen visibly reduces the appearance of sun damage with Celox Shield, UVA, UVB protection plus antioxidants.
For most of human history, our species has been trying to solve the problem of energy. How do we stay warm and cook our food, heat our homes, and later, how do we power our world and communicate with each other? Then, 70 years ago, we found a solution that changed everything. An energy miracle.
A giant of limitless power at man's command.
We found out how to throw a tiny neutron so hard at a special kind of atom that it would split apart, releasing a huge amount of energy in a chain reaction. First, we mostly used this chain reaction as a weapon.
The shadow of the atom bomb has been across all our lives.
But then, after the war, we started using it for more peaceful things, to solve our age-old energy problem. We learned to control the chain reaction, creating heat to boil water and spin a turbine. And we had electricity. A lot of electricity, all from this tiny amount of fuel. This was the utopian promise of nuclear power. Clean energy for all, using the simple power of an atom.
Within the atom's heart is not one, but many giants, seeking to provide vast quantities of energy to run the world's machines.
And for a while, we loved it. The US started building nuclear power plants all over the country. Power plants started popping up across Japan and Europe. Soon, France will be getting nearly 3/4 of their power from nuclear energy. All this in a time of oil crisis, when fossil fuels are expensive and getting scarce. The power of the atom was bringing peace and prosperity, abundance. But then, nuclear turned from darling to outcast.
There has been a nuclear accident in the Soviet Union, a state of emergency in 2 of the country's nuclear reactors.
The worst nuclear reactor accident.
3 Mile Island, Chernobyl,
Today,
and
nuclear power is in
Fukushima.
decline. And I've been trying to understand why. Why, in an era of climate crisis caused by fossil fuels, are we winding down this effective, carbon-free energy source? What happened to the promise of nuclear energy? Inevitably, I ended up in a conversation with my friend Cleo, who makes a show called Huge If True. She's someone who's reported on this a bunch before and was the perfect person to talk to help me sort this out.
Why is nuclear energy not like the saving grace of our civilization? We like sort of gave up. And I don't understand why, and I want to understand why.
This is a great story. Yes. I've looked into this in some ways for various videos, but I've never gone straight at it. I've never done the what the heck happened with nuclear video.
I feel like I will have a clearer version of this story if we can do it sort of tag team.
Are we going to do the cynic optimist thing?
Maybe. Yes. Here's the plan. I'm going to go down the rabbit hole on why people are afraid of nuclear energy. Like, what is the actual deal here? What are the events and the things that freak us all out?
And I'm going to figure out, okay, so what do we do about that? How do we use nuclear in the future?
And we can compare notes to look at, is there a future for this technology, and should we actually be as afraid as we are?
Awesome.
All right. Okay.
Oh, all right. Boy, I know so much more about nuclear energy than I did a few weeks ago, and I'm very excited to share it with you. And out to show up to the studio, and we're going to do a little show and tell explainer.
and it's going to be very exciting. But first, I need to thank the sponsor of today's video.
Cool.
Welcome to our studio.
Hi!
Just some radioactive waste.
But what exactly is nuclear energy? I don't know, but I know someone who does.
Okay, let's do this. We went deep in this on very different sort of aspects of nuclear energy, but we agreed upon three major buckets that are the reasons we believe that nuclear has not sort of become the promise of the future. Let's call them nuclear's three big problems, and they are accidents, waste, and cost. You understand these three, and you really understand nuclear's big issue or nuclear's big solution. I want to start with accidents, because accidents really are, I think, the biggest, most powerful thing in our popular imagination of why nuclear is scary. When you think of nuclear power plants, at least for me, I thought of like Chernobyl. Chernobyl is this really scary event that happened in Ukraine in the late 80s when a nuclear reactor melted down and then exploded and spewed radioactive material invisibly into the sky. Hundreds of thousands of people had to evacuate, and it turned the entire area into this like toxic wasteland, and it just has this very sort of scary apocalyptic energy to it. I mean, it's the reason why it's like the subject of this really popular HBO show. Chernobyl led to the death of hundreds of people. I think a lot of people think it's like tens of thousands of people. It was really hundreds of people.
From radiation.
Radiation, exactly. And then a lot of people were displaced. They had to leave, and that causes a huge disruption and is a major human cost. The numbers aren't massive here compared to other disasters that occur, but it's the spectacle of it. Like, you see this, and you see what radiation does. Radiation is this really weird, invisible thing that, like, you can't see, but, like, suddenly, if you're exposed to it in high doses, it can start to, like, break down the very building blocks of your cells.
It does.
And just sort of deteriorate your body, like, from the inside. Like, it's really sort of gruesome and hard to think about and look at. And I think that leaves an impression on people. This isn't the only event that has happened. Here in the United States, we had
3
a
Mile
nuclear
Island.
accident at 3 Mile Island. 147,000 people had to temporarily evacuate. It led to no deaths, but
I think that's surprising for a lot of people.
I think it is too. And again, because of the spectacle. More recently, there was a nuclear disaster, the third sort of big one in Japan. After an earthquake off the coast of Japan,
Fukushima.
a massive tsunami that washed up onto Fukushima
And destroyed the generators, the
that
diesel
got
generators.
completely overrun and broke it down and had another meltdown. Okay, but it's not just accidents. Think about
Because they were too stupid to put their freaking generators below the sea level, next to an ocean.
arm, you get your hands on this stuff, you can turn it into a weapon.
And you're not even talking about controlling nuclear proliferation by focusing on where people get uranium and enrichment and all of that. You're focusing on once nuclear power plants are built, there's a security risk.
Absolutely. And you see this in like polls and stuff. You have this public opinion poll here in the United States that asks Americans if they think we should use nuclear at all. Not like, should it be the #1 source or should we invest in it? It's, should we even use it as one of our sources? And look, almost 50% of people don't think we should even have it at all. Like, we should do away with nuclear power.
It's perfectly split.
Yeah, it's a 50-50. The percentage of people who say that nuclear power is safe is going down every year and is at 47%.
What happened in 2011?
That's Fukushima. And it did in me too. Like, I feel this. I feel this association with nuclear power because of these events. This is Japan, and nuclear is in yellow. Right after Fukushima, you see that nuclear power in Japan just gets kind of swashed. So, I think for me, the reason why accidents is like the top of this list is because accidents have this big psychological effect on people.
I think we need to separate out, though, risk of accidents, which are terrifying, from safety of an energy source. Because those are actually two different things.
Yeah, actually, more people get injured mining for coal than uranium. More people get injured in the fossil fuel industry than in the nuclear industry.
Based on how much energy you make.
this is the data for solar, nuclear, wind, and hydropower.
Okay.
So what you can see is that they don't have that many deaths per unit of electricity production. What this is saying is that these are all really, really safe energy sources. And nuclear is between solar and wind. Like, this is really important.
Oh, wait, I didn't even see that nuclear was down there.
Yeah.
Oh,
This
whoa.
includes all deaths from accidents. And nuclear is between our two most exciting renewable energy sources in terms of safety. All of these are
And yet, when we think of nuclear, we think of danger.
Yes. If you think about our energy mix, how much power we get from different sources of energy,
Holy shit.
that is fossil fuels. Here's the data that really drove this home for me. So our Walden data, that's the source of the chart that I just showed, did a calculation to really show people how this affects actual humans. So what they did is they set up a town called Euroville. This is a hypothetical town of 150,000 people. And Euroville uses 1 terawatt hour of electricity per year. If you powered Euroville for 1 year with just coal, this is the number of citizens of Euroville that would die. If you chose oil, if you powered Euroville for 1 year with just oil, this many people would die. Coal is actually 25, oil is 18.
Okay.
This is just 1 year of powering a town of 150,000 people. Those are real humans with families and lives and jobs. If you chose gas,
Yeah, that's my point. The coal industry is a lot more dangerous than the nuclear industry. However, the nuclear industry is a little bit more costly.
if you chose hydropower, 1 person. If you chose wind, nuclear, or solar, it would take 25 years for 1 person to die.
25 years.
I think it is totally understandable to focus on how scary accidents are. I don't mean to say, like, look at this data, like, we're so irrational.
Yeah.
But I do think that if we really cared about human lives, we would be paying a lot more attention to how many people fossil fuels kill, and we would be trying really, really hard to replace fossil fuels with wind, nuclear, solar, or hydropower as fast as humanly possible. And this is before we get to climate change.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
This is just production of these energy sources.
Yeah. It's not the carbon ramifications.
That's another reason, but it's separate from this.
I think it's that the accidents are just inherently scary in the same way that like a plane crash is scary. It's a spectacle.
I'm gonna take a break, guys.